Thank you, and welcome to a podcast with Good Medicine. Today I'm going to be talking about a popular YouTube person and personality by the name of George Bruno. But before I get into that, I just want to basically touch on what the whole point of my podcast is that I'm promoting Sakura Home, which will be a home I'm attempting to build for mentally disabled adults. And you can check out, I'm building a website right now. I'm having a little bit of trouble with it. It's a little bit more difficult than I thought. But when I get that up and running, you can check that out and get the information out on that. But Sakura Home is really a thing of love from my own heart, because my daughter has Down syndrome and I want to build a home for mentally disabled adults, because when they get older, they tend to deteriorate sooner in their 40s and 50s. They're known to get dementia in their 40s, and if their parents are in their 70s or 80s, they can't take care of them. And unfortunately, a lot of times they end up in substandard flop houses or nursing homes that are unequipped to take care of them, and they need to have a place that is specialized in take care of them. So really that is the whole point of this podcast. And anyway, on to George Bruno. George Bruno, he has got quite a following here on YouTube. He has a program called the Day Big Program, and I highly recommend him. I think he's good medicine. I think he has a lot of great things to say, very helpful. I listen to him 4 or 5 times a week. I find what he has to say very helpful, very inspiring. So I really don't have anything bad to say about George Bruno. He's like the rest of us. He's imperfect, but hey, I think it's a benefit to listen to him overall. But really, what I really wanted to kind of touch upon was, I think me and George Bruno have a little bit parting of the ways philosophically. And I wrote him a couple of emails, which I'm going to read. And I think they kind of really will give you a good picture of where I'm coming at with George Bruno. And really comes down to this whole concept that George Bruno has, I think, central to his, self-help program, which a lot of people do who are in the self-help business. And I don't really characterize George Bruno as self-help. I think he's more of a mentor. But you could kind of classify it as self-help. He does have a lot of good advice, which is very helpful. But the thing is, there's a very deep philosophical question about how much free will we have and how much of our life is determined. And I think more and more as I go into thinking about this topic, which I have for decades from a philosophical standpoint, is that I'm certainly leaning less towards free will and more towards determinism. And I really haven't really come down on one side or the other, as some people have. But I know that George Bruno has this concept of extreme responsibility, which is that you take responsibility for everything that happens in your life. And these 2 emails, which I'm trying to get him to respond to me, which he I don't think he's going to. And I'm going to talk about that after I read these 2 letters, why people don't respond to me when I ask tough questions. But it kind of really touches on the central issue of extreme responsibility and why I don't really fully agree with it. And trying to prompt George Bruno into a discussion, not really a debate or argument, which I'm afraid is not going to be happening. I really don't have the, charisma. And some people say you can do things to create it, which again I'm strongly disagree with. That George Bruno has, but So I certainly don't have the following or anything. So it's not like anybody's really listening to me. But really, I'm putting these podcasts out here, and I'm not doing YouTube to make money or to monetize it like Bruno and a lot of other people are. I'm really just doing this more for posterity, for the benefit of the people that are listening. Because really, there's $0 in this for me. I'm not making any money on Patreon or on YouTube or any other website. Some people, they have formulas that can do it. And once again, I will discuss that at a later date, what I think of all of that. So first of all, let's start with the first email I sent to George Bruno. So here it goes. Dear Mr. George Bruno, well, I've been listening to your YouTube channel for a while, and I have many good things to say, maybe too many to mention here. But I'm not writing to tell you all of the good things, but instead to challenge you a bit. I consider myself a natural philosopher. This to the chagrin of those in the ivory towers of the university whom seem to think philosophy is only their domain. I read, I listen, I ponder, and nothing is beyond critical review. God, the Bible, and even little old George Bruno. And here's what I think. Notwithstanding the vast amounts of good advice and insights you give, I think there is not necessarily a flaw, but maybe if it could be better described as an oversight or a blind spot. Well, I can't quite describe this in a word or even a phrase, so let me start with this quote from the great philosopher Barak, meaning blessed in Hebrew, Spinoza. Quote, further conceive, I beg, that a stone, while continuing in motion, should be capable of thinking and knowing, that it is endeavoring, as far as it can, to continue to move. Such a stone, being conscious merely of its own endeavor and not at all indifferent, would believe itself to be completely free and would think that it continued in motion solely because of its own wish. That is, that human freedom, which all boast they possess, and which consists solely in the fact that men are conscious of their own desire, but are ignorant of the causes whereby that desire has been determined. End quote. To restate what he is saying is that we are like the stone, thinking we do the things we do so out of our own free will, when in fact we are moved by forces beyond our control. In short, we do not have the free will we think we have. Self-help, motivational movements, and the like all have at their core ideal, even unstated, that you, the individual, are the master of your fate. All you have to do is follow the right advice, do the right things, put in the time and effort, and things will get better. And here I come, a self-described philosopher, and say, you know what? Maybe that is not the real state of affairs. Now, I think someone like yourself, speaking of George Bruno, having a vested interest and even seeing world results firsthand may be quick to dismiss, even argue against what I am about to say and even have said, to say, in short, that it is your fate to be successful or not successful. A friend of mine I grew up with, by the name of Pete, became schizophrenic around the age of 20. I saw him one day walking around and stopped and asked if he needed a ride. We got to talking, and he told me he was homeless, and I inquired why, and he told me he kicked himself out of his mom's house. The more I talked to him, the more I realized he had a break with reality. He claimed he was a better guitarist than Eddie Van Halen, and he really believed this. He could not even hold down a job as a dishwasher because he would not go out. He would go out back and smoke and talk to himself, never completing the job. To make a long story short, I found a social worker who got him on disability income, an apartment, and food stamps and medical care. Shy of that intervention, he would have been panhandling in the street corners, begging for money while someone would have yelled at him to go get a fucking job. You might say that people with mental illness, mental retardation alike are exceptions, but I want you to think about your audience for a moment. 1/3 of them are not homeless drug addicts. Another third are not gangbangers or the mentally ill. Every last person in your audience has a built-in disposition to listen to self-help material. And just where did that come from? They are like the stone, thinking they are listening on their own free will, when in fact a myriad of forces brought them there in the first place, and those myriad of forces pushed them to adhere to your advice. I remember you talking about how you, from the age of 14, started reading the mail, improving your speaking voice, and proceeded to give some good tips on how to improve speaking voice. I remember being told as a teenager that my handwriting looked like chicken scratch. With the criticism in mind, I set out to practice and improve my handwriting. Decades later, at 55, my handwriting has improved, but not much. If simply working hard, lots of practice, following the best advice is all I had to do, then why has my handwriting not improved by leaps and bounds? Or my speaking voice? What I think of you and many well-meaning people in the self-help industry overlook is not everyone is the same. One person can run at 23 miles an hour, and another can only run at 12, no matter how hard or long they train. In other words, we all have limits, and those limits vary. You have a good speaking voice, and with hard work, the right knowledge and effort on your part, it became great. Maybe we would dispute this, but if you did not have it to begin with, at some level, no amount of practice would have taken you beyond your God-given limits. For you, with your voice, you could go far. For someone else, no matter what they do, they're not going far. I can't think of not one great talent anywhere or at any time that did not have it to begin with. And just where did they get it to begin with? The ideal that we all have to do is follow the steps, and then presto changeo, we will be successful, may not be true. Yes, I think if you practice at anything, you will get better, but only to the degree of your God-given or natural limits. For some, the sky is the limit. For others, a dead end. There are books on how to be a genius. Think about that. All anyone has to do is read one of those books and follow the advice. Genius is everywhere, or maybe not so. Why? Because either you are a genius or you're not, and you have no choice in the matter. So all we can do is run our best race, and the best will vary from person to person. Some advice works for almost everyone. Case in point, losing weight, gaining muscles, getting in shape, because all you have to do is very similar biology as Homo sapiens. There's a lot of advice that can help anyone, anywhere at any time. But those seeking it out are predisposed to do so. Those who don't are predisposed not to do so. What are the unseen forces moving one in any particular direction? Like the stone, they do not see what it is that moves them right or left. They only know they move and think they do so on their own. I ponder what I call Eliot's paradox, which states that we are masters of our own fate, while at the same time victims beyond forces of our control. Why did God, fate, the Tao, nature, or whatever make my friend Pete mentally ill, and as a result have a life filled with suffering and struggle, while it made your life full of blessing and success? I have no answers, but there it is. No amount of time listening to the Daybreak program or other great self-help speakers will ever help Pete. That is the sad truth. The only thing that ever helped Pete was compassionate people. Mr. Bruno, I humbly think the ancient Greeks were onto something when they said, know what you are and be such. So my advice to know what you are and to focus on that. Otherwise, you are barking up the wrong tree. And finally, Mr. Bruno, I simply submit this letter to you in hopes of expanding your thoughts on these matters. If you have time, you can respond, and I would like it if you could respond via email and, if possible, on one of your Daybreak programs so that a wider audience can have your ponderings upon this profound matters. Sincerely and Godspeed, Steve Elliott, Good Medicine. Okay, that was the first letter. Hopefully I read it clearly. And let me go over here to the second one I sent about a month or two later. And it kind of, because I had got no response from Mr. Bruno, and I didn't think so, and I explained this in the letter. So here's the second letter. Mr. George Bruno. First of all, below is an article I came across about a young woman, 28 years old, perfectly healthy, and is opting for euthanasia or legal suicide in the Netherlands. Just wondering about your thoughts on the matter. I think there's a huge flaw in today's zeitgeist, which is that we should be happy. The truth is that human condition is such that, honestly, most of the time we're not happy, and in my opinion, that is all okay. We don't have to strive to be happy. Sometimes we are, most of the time we are not. But I think we can be content with what we have right here and right now. Secondly, I sent an email and got no response, and to tell you the truth, I know you're busy, have many other people who contact you, so I don't necessarily expect a response. This is the life of being a quasi-famous YouTuber, and it has its trade-offs. The email was titled, "A Profound Question and a Bit of a Challenge for You." Basically, the topic is a philosophical challenge to your philosophy of extreme responsibility. For me, for most of my life, I did fully accept extreme responsibility, so much so that we even choose to be in this life, because in my philosophy, we all come from what I call the source. Some call it God, but I think of this concept of God as a misnomer, and when we die, we return to that source, which is actually unfathomable. Even if you were billions of times smarter, wiser, and had access to all the information in the universe, you still would not comprehend the source. This source, which some who have died described it as so off the charts and so phenomenally great, the greatest wisdom and knowledge can't fully comprehend it. We are, in effect, just children. Anyway, always pray for truth in all things, and it seems to be the case that my rock-solid assurance that we are the masters of our own fate may not be so clear-cut as I thought. To say that this revelation is disruptive to my worldview has been an understatement. I have a history of being disruptive and asking very tough questions because I always ask them of myself first, and when I ask others, like yourself, these same questions or raised issue, I never get a response. Never. And I've asked many of the great minds, the great so-called gurus, and the like many various tough questions, and it's all crickets. All the gurus are busy, too busy to deal with little old me, and I understand they are indeed busy. Or maybe they can't answer them, or maybe they don't want to be challenged. Most of them may have some reasoning process that I am trying to fight with them, or that such people like me are a waste of time. I can't know for sure, but the fact remains there's total silence. This is interesting. I remember a few years ago I was talking to a real estate agent and was complaining about the system, and he stopped me and said, "You are entitled." Basically, he was attempting to call me out, shut me down, and tell me my complaints were all my fault. So I paused, asked him a very tough question, and then dead silence on the other end. He realized it was not all as he thought it was. I've dubbed it Eliot's paradox, which states we are masters of our fate and victims of circumstances all at the same time. A paradox because there's evidence to support both sides. You take an argument to where it leads, and if the evidence all of a sudden branches into two different opposite opposing viewpoints, we have a paradox. Well, George, in my attempts to understand this universe and this unfathomable source, I've run into many complex mysteries I can't understand. A vast void of endless mysteries. To tell you the truth, I'm not certain on the true state of affairs. Extreme responsibility or fate or both or a mix of the two or different degrees with each individual, I'm not sure. Whatever the case may be, I can no longer fully side with extreme responsibility. I'm not trying to rain on your parade here or knock down your core thesis, just question it, and to do so in an honest way. I'll conclude with a quote from the late and great philosopher Spinoza I quoted in the first email, which was the one I had about the stone. And then I finish by saying, "Well, George, you have recommended being disruptive, so here I am. And once again, not to pick a fight or even a debate. I don't like to fight or argue or tear down, but do as Apostle Paul said, to build up one another. A Christian ethic that is front and center in my life." And then I leave him with the prayer of St. Francis and ask him if he could probably read that on his Daybreak program, which I will be reading more of this prayer, which is a prayer I say every day. You can look it up. And then I say sincerely, Steve Elliott. And then I linked to an article about the woman who was 28 and committing euthanasia. So these are the 2 letters. And George Bruno isn't the only person I have that I'm going to talk about who doesn't respond to challenging questions or inquiries, because there's a whole lot of other people I have, and I certainly don't think I really have time to go through all of them, but I'll give you a few examples. And I like these people. The guy by the name of Quasi Jor, and I don't really know too much about him, but he's probably questionable to me. And RJ Spina, I sent him some challenging questions and letters, and I like RJ a lot, just like I like George Bruno a lot. But as you can see, the great gurus are silent, and this is the second email I sent to Mr. Bruno. Once again, we always have to realize these people are very busy. They're quasi-famous on YouTube, and they got their own lives to live. And so, I could chalk it up to that. But what's kind of interesting is I have sent Bruno and RJ and some other people short little emails just saying nice things. And they did respond to those emails, by the way, saying thanks. So it does seem like they read my emails, but I'm just kind of pondering why someone like George Bruno won't answer these questions. And if anybody's out there, they can certainly send this to him and see what you think. But the whole question of free will versus determinism is a deep philosophical question that's been going on for centuries with a lot of philosophers, whether it was Nietzsche or Schopenhauer or Spinoza and other philosophers. And even to this day, there's a lot of people talking about scientists, biologists, and so on and so forth. And we have a lot more information than we did back then. But I don't think, I think hopefully my emails kind of clarify the position, that I just don't agree with this self-help thing, because if we go a little bit further with this, we have also with this territory of the secret, which is an area that I really am very against. It's very popular on YouTube. There's a book on it, there's videos, there's whole YouTube channels on it, and really it takes this whole concept of extreme responsibility to the next level, even beyond what George Bruno would take it, to this ideal that you can manifest anything, and that if you get in the right vibrations, and I will certainly address that issue on another podcast. But this is going right down, if you take that logically, extreme responsibility, you just keep going further with it, this is where you go. And I think this is a very dangerous teaching. The Secret is very popular, and there's even YouTube ads where people are saying, well, if you were trying to manifest things and it didn't work, you're doing it wrong, which I just have to roll my eyes at these ads. Again, unlike these other people out here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not selling you anything. I'm just trying to promote my soccer home charity, and you can get on board with me or not. I'm not going to, I could use brainwashing techniques and all kinds of techniques I know, but I don't. I'm just going to be totally honest and pure about it, and I realize that is not the best method to sell anything, but I am just not into trying to get into your wallet and sell you on The Secret or Extreme Responsibility or anything else. I'm just here to put out a message that hopefully makes the world a better place. A message that lives beyond me. And George Bruno talks about this, doing something that lives beyond you. And that's part of the reason I'm doing this YouTube thing and the Patreon thing, is to have a message that when I'm gone, it's still there and hopefully helping you. That's still going to be good medicine to you. I think George Bruno is good medicine. I think he helps you a lot. It's just that me and Bruno have and not just Bruno, but a lot of the spiritual gurus and self-help people, we may not see eye to eye on this self-determination, extreme responsibility, determinism, philosophical issue. Because certainly if it was all in your control, well, I guess you could technically do anything, right? But I say there's limits. There's limits on what a human being can do. As I said in my first letter to Bruno, some people can run at 23 miles per hour. Some people can't. And it's not just running, it's everything. Some people can sit down and play the piano well. Some people can learn bricklaying in 2 months, some people in 6 months, some never. And it has to do with who and what they are, and not always effort. And you wonder why people succeed and fail. And I think from the Bruno's worldview, is they just didn't try, or something. And that may be the case sometimes, but I think more often than not, it is what I have in my way of looking at things is what I call a quintessential quality of having it. You either have it or you don't. And that could be in anything: bricklaying, singing, speaking, writing, whatever. And if you have it, you just practice and you get great at it. If you don't have the quintessential quality of having it, or whatever that may be, then you ain't going to get it. And that's why I go back to that whole idea of knowing who you are and what you can be, and being such, because if you try to be something you're not, you're going to, run into a brick wall, so to speak. And we all have a limited amount of time here on this earth, so we really got to focus on what we are, what we can do, and really put aside those things that we may like to do, and focus on what we can do. Maybe you want to be a great singer, but you just don't have the quintessential quality of doing it. So, but maybe you have the quintessential quality of being a great runner. So do that. Hopefully you like doing it. If you don't, I wouldn't recommend doing it. So that kind of concludes what I had to say. But like again, I said, it will be, I think a snowball has a better chance in hell than Bruno or anybody. All the great gurus responded to me, and I'm just a little old me out here, and I just find it amazing that the great minds and great gurus who have all this great advice and are going to tell you things for hours on end on YouTube won't take 1 second to respond to me. So, your thoughts. Thank you.